Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I decided to go ahead because people have been demanding I do this for a long time of actually measure my height on camera. And it's really funny because the most ridiculous part is that people say things like, oh, the fact that you mention it means you're insecure about your height, right? But there are entire videos with tens of thousands of views that people had already made accusing me of lying about my height. So it's not even insecurity, it's the fact that it's actually become a big issue. And the fact that I don't measure it ever on camera, in spite of all my medical records, in spite of my driver's license, everything else having my height on it, people actually say, oh, now you're hiding it. It would be so easy to measure it. So I realized, you know what, it actually would be really easy to measure it. I have a power rack, I have tape measures, and I actually went through the trouble here, and I'll explain everything I did here in a minute so that you guys can see the step by step in a minute, because I'm just going to flip this through. All right, as you guys see, the 69 inches is just a hair above, it's a little bit above the bottom of that pin, right? And you guys notice I've got the tape pulled over the top with the weight hanging down. Why? So it pulls the slack out of it. Pulls some of the slack out, and it's pretty much as close to the upright as I can get it. I put a strap up there at the top a little bit, and then I slung it over so that it could pull it tight, and I stuck the piece down here under the bottom. Now, what I have is an added perk there, and anyone can do the math themselves. People are like, why wouldn't you just measure it off of a different device? Well, by doing it on my power rack, one of the benefits I have is that you guys can see the holes on there. And this is already kind of shows the dishonesty of people who want to discredit me and call me a liar. There's someone out there who actually made a video explaining the measurement of my rack, but they only used the upright and compared how high I am when squatting or doing other stuff, right? They did that, but they didn't factor in that the upright is bolted to the top of another device on the floor. So if you see that whole black band down there, that has a thickness. The height of the rack has a thickness. Those holes are at standardized heights. So by me using a tape measure on top of using this upright with the actual, again, it's bolted to the bottom, it's bolted to the top of it. So you have the space of that spacer at the bottom. Then the length of the upright, that is a second reference that is made by Rogue. It's, again, standardized brand. You can get those specifications yourself. You can see that my peg is in the 11th hole from the top. All right. You could look at that and you could get all the dimensions of every single piece here because they're to a standard specification. And a person could double check to make sure my tape measurement is accurate. So I've actually given two standards. Now, the reason it's important that I set it right there is that I needed to have something that when I put my feet flat, my heels flat, heels were together, my butt against the upright and my upper back against the upright, that when I stood up straight, it moved it. That's the reason I put the blue piece at the end so that you guys could see the actual movement. As you guys will see when I get under there, which means when I'm actually stood up at my tallest while staying on my heels, right, while still keeping my heels on the floor. That's why, again, I have to duck under it a little bit, and I have to start crouched under a hair so that I can stand up straight because my head hits it. So it is actually lower than the top of my head. But when I get under it, it goes up and I move it, right? So the top of my head when I'm at my tallest actually moves this device about a ½ inch, right? It moves it about a ½ inch. The reason for that is that way we know that I made physical contact with it. We know that I moved it. And so therefore the bottom of it is slightly, very, very slightly, like a fraction of an inch lower than my actual height. Okay? And again, that's why I show this stuff back and forth so that you guys can see it's hooked into the bottom. The tape is pulled about as straight as I can get it. Again, I've got a band up there at the top just to hold it in, and then I looped it over the top loop to, again, that's all I could do to pull tension out, right? That's all I could do to pull tension out was to loop it over the top so that the weight of the tape pulls the metal tape taut. Now keep in mind that is a metal tape. It's going to be pretty taut no matter what. But so that again, people can't argue that I've got it crumbled and that there's nothing else attaching anywhere between the point of measurement at the top or the bottom. So there's nothing there to distort it or pull it. And then I've got it pulled up through the top so that it's as taut as I can reasonably get it, because I'm using the weight of it to pull it like a plumb bob. So, and again, we've got the rack is another measurement. A person could go do the math themselves, figure out how far those pinholes are from the top to the bottom, check the thickness of the actual piece that it's bolted to at the bottom, and add it all up. Because I think someone tried to pull that before, but they only used the upright without realizing the upright isn't on the ground. But I can't fraud the height of the rack pieces, so a person could go look those up also on the Rogue website. So why does this matter? Because, again, it's been a point of contention, and I've also pointed out to people that in powerlifting, you need to know your exact height, because weight classes are height classes in disguise, right? So having an actual accurate measurement of my height is useful for determining body compositions I need to hit for powerlifting. It's also interesting because it's such a big deal online of so many fitness personalities fraud their height. And I've tried to bring that up, and then people say, well, you fraud yours too, because the assumption is that everyone does. And there's a lot of you guys out there who might actually think that you're 5'11", and then you find out you're 5'9" or 5'8", when you actually check it yourself without shoes on, barefooted, right? So a lot of people who are like, well, I'm taller than you or whatever, I'm 5'10", you might find that you're 5'8", and you just thought you were 5'10". And the thing that I point out, though, is that people like Jeff Seid claim 6 foot on the internet. I've met Jeff Seid. He is the same height as me. He's the same height as me. One person on here on YouTube who claims to be the same height as me, and he probably is Omar Issoff, right? His published stats are the same as what we just proved mine is, what we know mine is. So I guess my point here is that if people want there to be this transparency, they're always like, well, you need to prove this, you need to prove that. Well, okay, well, fine. I proved my height to a reasonable objective standard. A reasonable objective standard. How many of these other guys produce all these stats that they claim they have, an arm measurement, a height, everything else, with no evidence, at all? You know, I've published my DEXA scan results. Now, people can cross-reference my height, because people say, well, your height could be different, and therefore your fat-free mass index could be different. Okay, well, you have my real height, which was on my DEXA scan. You can go plug that in. You guys can determine how much muscle I have in each arm, each leg, in my torso. You can determine all that now. You can find my fat-free mass index. So it's all transparent. It's all completely transparent. And people have also said, well, you've never given us a weight. The DEXA scan takes your weight. I've produced 3 different DEXA scans. Hey, eventually maybe I'll jump on a scale too, and then we can verify my weight also. But the whole point here is that, here's what I want to say. All these people who have harassed me for years claiming I'm lying about my height, now that you know that I'm not, and you see my height, I want you guys to maybe go talk to all these other people who put up height stats all over social media, right? Hell, it could even be Omar. Even though I think Omar is being honest. Omar, I know Jeff Seid lies about his. I know Kai Green lies about his. I've met them in person. They are not their reported height, because I know how tall I am. I've stood near them. I've seen them in person. They're both 2 to 3 inches shorter than their published stats. Simeon Panda is less than 6 foot. He claims 6'1". He is not even 6 foot. I've met him. He's maybe 5'10". He's maybe an inch taller than me, right? He might even be close to 5'11". He's not over 6 foot. But that's kind of the point. So many people lie about their heights that there are a lot of guys out there who honestly think they're 6 foot and don't realize they actually aren't. Might see themselves next to them and say, oh, no, he's 6 foot because he's the same height as me. Well, you might find that you're not 6 foot. You just think you are because it sounds good and it's a good number to be at. Did your doctor measure it? Was it measured ever with your shoes off? So it's just an interesting thing here. And the only reason I did this is because it's so easy. It literally took me 5 minutes to set this up, to walk over, film it, and then 10 minutes to do a voiceover. It didn't take any effort on my part. But it debunks one of the silly, ridiculous conspiracy theories about me, which is there's one of many. And what they come down to is that a lot of the things that people think that I lie about are actually provably true. And obviously, anything that I can't prove, I don't make claims of anymore for the simple fact that it's just not worth it to me. I don't claim things that I can't prove objectively anymore, and I don't anymore because it's just silly. And people are going to call you on anything. It doesn't even matter what it is. So it's kind of like I've reached a point I don't even want to say stuff on here unless I can offer some sort of proof. And height's a perfect example. Hell, maybe next I'll actually let my hair grow out for 4 days without shaving it. Then we can address that one too, right? So maybe that'll be in the future also. But seriously, guys, let's start a height verified movement just for the hell of it, just for the mints. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.